Thank you, Ashley, and Rennie, and Colleen. And good morning, and welcome to those of you who are joining us online. Now, if you were with us last week online, you noticed we had a little disconnect with our audio right about 2 minutes before the end of the service. Well, I looked up and the sound team was busily working trying to fix it, but little did we know that the problem was the transmitter that was behind me, and there was nothing we could do about it. So let's pick up where we left off last week, because we were talking about how this idea of languaging and learning about our bodies and how science and religion is using one set of language skills and science is using another set of language skills, but we're really talking about the same thing. And the more we can understand that sort of what I'm calling the marriage between the two, the more we see and the more we validate how religion and science are not diametrically opposed, as some people would like to teach us to believe, but that in fact they support one another, that they have the same energy, they have the same validation of the one great mystery that pulses behind everything. So we were talking about this languaging, and I think it's so fascinating because what happens in our life is we tend to think language is only in the brain, and in some respects that's true. We speak English in the brain, or we speak French, or we speak some other language, and that's the language we know, it's the language we understand. But as time has gone on, and as studies have gone on, science has told us there's a language of emotion. We call it psychology. It's the language of fear and anger and joy and peace. So there's another kind of set of language skills that we need to learn to use. Spiritually, the same thing is true. We call it consciousness. We often call it peace. We call it euphoria, being in the one, being in the zone, that kind of thing. And aren't we talking about the same thing? And ultimately, what we're striving toward during this series is listening to the language of the body. Because 125 years ago, Myrtle Fillmore told us that every cell of our being was intelligent life. And science today is affirming exactly what she said. Now, last Sunday, we were talking about how it is that we know scientifically that every 7 years, all the cells go away. We get replenished, we get replaced. But then if that's true, the essential question has to be, why do we age? If we get new little cell capsules all over our cells, why is it that we age? So we have to, and I use that imagery of like, you know, when you get vitamin pills in those little gelatin capsules, you throw the gelatin capsule away, you get a new gelatin capsule, but you put the same ingredients in the inside. Now this is both good news and bad. The good news is, because your cellular structure gets replaced every 7 years, it does not lose its memory. That's how we know that the cell is intelligent. Let me give you an example. When you go to the doctor, say you've broken your arm or your leg or whatever it might be, the doctor does not say to you, well, hang on, 7 years from now, every cell will replace and you'll have a brand new arm. 7 years from now, you will go and the x-ray will show there was a break. Now it's healed and the arm is strong again. So the cell remembers what healing is. Okay? The cell has remembered where you're at in life. Because the cell is intelligent, it also has a memory. It has a consciousness. And not only has it remembered biologically where you are, it has also remembered where you are spiritually and where you are emotionally. Bad news. Because it has such a good memory, when we start to talk about changing our lives, changing our consciousness, it's not simplistically a matter of changing a singular thought. Because every single cell, remember how many were there? 37 trillion, remembers the trauma, remembers the pain. All 37 cells, not just in your foot where it got, stepped on by the cow in the barnyard and it broke your foot when you were a kid, but all 37 trillion cells remember the trauma that went with that. And so what happens is we think that we come into unity, and I was talking about my own experience of coming into unity, and all you had to do is change a couple affirmations, and voila, you were healed. Well, on one level, in a very pristine level, that's true. But on a real level, all the trauma that went with whatever it is I'm thinking about, the anger, the pain, the disappointment, the frustration, that is all saved within the cell, even though every 7 years the cell has given up the support, it still contains all of that trauma. Now, it may seem like, oh man, that's pretty overwhelming, Marianne. How are we going to change every one of our 37 trillion cells to have a spiritual awakening, to have a healing? Well, it's not as complex, and yet it is. First and foremost, healing takes intention. And I happen to notice today, our new Unity magazine is out in the foyer. And what is the theme? The power of intention. The power of intention. When we intend, when we set out to heal ourselves, we must have an intention about it. Just to take some affirmations or just to take some good words or good thoughts, that is not enough to really radically shift and alter our entire being. And this became very aware for me when I first got into Unity, because as I shared with you last week, boy, I was doing the affirmation thing, and I bought every Unity book there ever was, and I was doing all the good stuff. But I never could, I'd sit there in the pew, just like you are, and I'd listen to the minister talking about intention, thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind, and we're, and grace and action, and I would be sitting there going, yeah, right. You don't know how bad my life is. And then she said, you have the power to change it through the power of your words and your thoughts. And I thought, sister, let me tell you something. Those people at work, the government, my family upbringing, and I started my litany of how bad it is. And I never, ever could get something to change because, it's their fault. And one day I was sitting in that pew, and I got it. I got it. At one moment, I thought to myself, what if, I wasn't going all the way, what if what she was saying might be true? Just a little bit of it. I don't want to get rash and go for the whole thing. What if if one thought could change, could it be that my life was more under my control than I ever gave myself credit for? Because what I gave credit for was how miserable the imperial they, had made my life. And what if, for one moment, I would say, well, just maybe I have something to do with it? You could have knocked me out of that chair. Because in the minute I took the intention of ownership, everything changed. Everything changed. Now, I am not going to stand up here and say, I had a miracle healing, I became younger, thinner, richer, and, all of that kind of stuff. No, but it set me on a trajectory of a journey that I have never looked back. We have these belief systems because that's what's held in those cells, not only the DNA, not only the cell instructions, not only the biological chemistry of our bodies, not only our memories, but also our consciousness. Because our consciousness is our belief systems, right? And when our belief systems begin to change, then things have got to move around it. Way back when, I'll date myself with this reference, there used to be a comedian by the name of Flip Wilson. He used to say, whoop, the devil made me do it. Remember that? Okay, well, I'm telling you, once you get into Unity and you figure out that you are responsible for your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your consciousness, you can never, ever go back to the devil made me do it. You might want to, trust me. There's been a lot of times when I say, it's their fault. I can't be having this bad life. It's their fault. But I realize over time that it isn't about they at all. It's about me and how I perceive and how I give out and how I take in all the energy of the world. And no longer can I even think about, when I hear people talk about, well, the devil just came and took me over and the devil did this and the devil led me astray. And I thought, that's okay for you, but for me, it's not an empowered stance. We teach empowerment. And I am not empowered if something or someone does it to me, whatever it is. It is empowering what I think and feel and respond. And that's what's so important here. So we look at how our belief systems slowly but subtly begin to change with intention. And that change module, as we said, that's the first level. Because remember, we've been talking all along about there's 3 ways to define the cell. First of all, it's fluid. 50% of every cell is water. Number 2, it's energy. 99% of every cell is nothing but space. It is just pure space wrapped in an energy bond. And thirdly, it is an idea. I love that. Your body, every cell, is an idea that has lived for trillions of years, well, billions of years. It is the DNA coding that was passed down through generation after generation after generation, and it is held in the memory of our being. And it's so important that we understand if we are wanting to change our lives, we are striving to have a happier, healthier, whatever life, that the first thing we need to do is recognize that that level of fluidity, here's the way we say it in Unity. We have to learn to go with the flow, right? That fluidity, that change. What is that all about? Letting go of resistance, forgiveness, that first level of movement. And we feel it in our bodies as the need for water. We feel it because our bodies are fluid. And as we expend the tears that are what? Fluid, then our body says, I need to be replenished. Something new. You've upset the equilibrium of my fluidity. So when we want to talk about healing, and I'm using healing in a very, the broadest perspective. When we talk about, opening ourselves up to more spirituality, the first thing that's required of us is some sort of change. The second thing is energy. And this I find so fascinating because energy is both the expending and the resting, isn't it? So all exercise gurus will tell you that you have to give energy to get energy. Now, quite frankly, I found that to be the oddest thing as I'm sweating and pounding, and I'm thinking, how am I getting any energy? I just want to take a nap. I want to take a shower. But we know that the body, as it cleans out its energy, it's cleaning out its systems. That's one side of it. The other side of our energy is what? Rest. Because we know, too, from science, that our body replenishes itself at night. And what are we supposed to be doing at night? We are supposed to be resting. Now let's take this spiritually. What do we need to expend our energy? In other words, we give out our energy to help someone. We give out our energies to write a card. We give out our energies to sing a song. We give out our energies to play and to pray. And then the flip side of it is we have to come back to that resting spot. Now, I want to be clear because sometimes people feel that when we talk about resting spiritually, we're only talking about meditation. And I think it's important to understand that resting is all about just letting go, remember, being back in the flow, of our to-do list for a moment. To appreciate a sunset, to walk along the river, to feel the cooling breeze today. Take a look at the flowers that are in bloom in our garden, how beautiful. and just say, look, the purple and the red, and to embrace what's red and what's yellow, to just let down that headiness that we have and to be open. And the third, languaging of the idea. This idea that from the moment of all creation, God said, let there be the idea, the energy, the force, the oneness, whatever it is, into vibrational quality. And from that moment, all creation was born. And so I can't help but think, and this has been a radical change for me really over the last 5 years, that I'm getting more and more and more clear that our spirituality, my spirituality, is about how I create. Now, before you start saying, but I don't do art and I don't dance and I don't sing, I'm not talking about that. I am talking about creating a life. You are all creating your life. And it is that creation of your life that you most emulate the Creator. And there's something about that when you create something in your life. You say to yourself, remember with the intention, I want to learn to play the banjo. And you say, I have no idea how to play the banjo. I don't even know what a banjo looks like, but I want to do that. And so we begin to do something with intention. We shift our energy, we shift the fluid, right? We have to go to classes, we have to buy a banjo, we have to figure out what a banjo sounds like. We have to make time for practice. Our energy gets shifted as we put effort into it, and then we have to learn in music about what? Pause and rest. Stress and rest. Every musical instrument has it. Every song has it. You just don't run notes together. So ultimately, this idea gets born. And I find that more and more and more that my spiritual journey is intimately interwoven to creativity. And it is when I most emulate the Creator is when I am creative. It brings me the most peace. It brings me the most joy. And I'm not necessarily talking, again, about art or music or photography or any of those things. I'm talking about when I create my own life. As Colleen said a few moments ago, and if you've read it in our newsletter, on July 1, next Sunday, I will be on a 30-day sabbatical. And I want to talk about a 30-day sabbatical because I've had some interesting questions about what that is. The first question is, are you going to have television? The idea is to go away from television, okay? It's not to take the television with me. It's interesting because using these 3 steps, I got it in a whole new way what sabbatical is all about. So number 1, change. I'm going away. I'm going to a place I have never been before. And I intentionally have gone to a place I've never gone before for the definite purpose of being different, of being off-center, of being new. And you know, when you go someplace when you're new, you're more alert, aren't you? You're more awake, you're more present. So the first thing that will happen during this cycle, it's kind of like a bell curve. First thing that would happen is it's to get there. It's a 5-hour drive from here. It's up above Kansas City. So it'll be a long time to drive and to get there, to settle into my little cottage in the woods where I've never been before. And you know what happens the first night? Did you hear the heater? Did you hear that noise? Did you hear a wolf? Did you hear a boa constrictor? I'm sure they're going to all come, oh my God, there's a revolution going on right side. And it's cicadas. It's like, no, we don't live in a world of nature, and so we have to listen for nature now. And intentionally, I do that so that it brings me back to nature, back to the pulsation and the vibration of the one energy of all of life. So as I go there and I settle in, the first day or 2 is that very, very disoriented time. You're trying to find things, you're trying to find the system, you're trying to find your way around. It is a retreat center. Think Osage Forest of Peace, because a lot of you have been there, only it's bigger. It's the facility and the grounds are bigger. So then what happens is what I call, this two phases that are the worst part of sabbatical. It's what I call the cathartic dump. I sit there and I've unpacked and I go, oh my God, I've forgotten. Oh no, when I go back, I purposely bring a big blank notebook because I have to write down everything my brain has all of a sudden decided that we were going to do when we got back home, or all of the stuff we didn't do before we left, and we have to remember it. Because there is some value in allowing myself to remember it on paper. Because then when I go, oh, am I supposed to? It's written down. Forget it. Let it go. Forget it. And then to me comes the toughest part. It is the empty part when my body says, remember the expenditure of energy is both out and in? It says, sister, put it down. There have been times, this is not my first 30 days silent retreat. There have been times I have literally slept for 4 straight days. We do not understand as a society, and it's not just me, we all live busy lives, how wound up we are. And if you don't think so, how many had a cup of coffee this morning, at least one, stopped at Starbucks, there's one on every corner, a Red Bull. Where do these drinks come from? You know, the Monster drinks and the Red Bull drinks, they're all what? They're made to hype your energy. So when you strip all of that away, you come crashing down. And depending on how tired I am at that point, and it's very, it's unsettling because you don't sleep like that. Because normally you have to get up at a certain time, you have a schedule, you have a routine, you have a ritual, you got to get going, But this is just sleep. And I can always hear God just say, sleep, sleep. And because I don't sleep like that, none of us sleep like that unless we're truly sick, it's hard to take. I should be doing so. I should mark it off. I slept 2 hours. Check off the box. Now what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? No, what I know I'm doing is healing. What I understand better from this series is that all those cells who are intelligent, who hold memory of all of the things in my body that I've stressed to the max, saying, demand, 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 come on, keep me going, keep this happening, keep this going, are there saying, now's our chance to rebuild. Just like at night when I sleep, only in a much grander scale. So those couple of days are very, very difficult. Not from the sense that I'm doing anything or challenging anything, but they're unsettling. They're very, very unsettling. And then comes finally a place of peace. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to think anything. You can simply just be open. You can be out in nature and take a walk and not hurry back for something. You can sit in the chair in the room and read, maybe, or just stare at the wall. And allow that spirit to come forth. Allow the spirit, what was healing to the body through the sleep is now the healing of the soul through the spiritual rest and time of prayer. And now I finally understand it from this cycle that we've been talking about. The last usually 2 weeks are very, very creative. And I never understood why that happens. But you know, I have learned after doing this several times that I need to take a couple books to read. My favorite spiritual authors, John O'Donohue and Father Richard Rohr and Christina Waltner's Painter and all my spiritual books. And I take some of them. And I take a big sketch pad and lots of crayons and pens and pencils, and I take with me my camera, of course, because that's another part of my creative expression, and a big old notebook. And it's interesting to me how spirit expresses. Sometimes I come home with all the books and never read one. Sometimes I come home with lots and lots of art. The last time I went on sabbatical 5 years ago, I wrote, and I filled one of those notebooks. I had taken a book with me that had been sitting on my shelf. It was called How to Write the Psalms. And I thought, well, a friend of mine gave me this, I should read it. And I got into it in that second phase, okay? And it was all about looking at the structure of the Psalms and then writing your own. Now, all the meditations that you have been hearing over these last couple years, it all came out of those writings. I wrote and wrote and wrote till my hand hurt. Because there's something about when we are physiologically more stable, when we are spiritually more in tune, it makes sense then that the language of spirit is creativity. God is trying to say something to me, through me, uniquely as me, in through my own creative gifts. And to not say, oh, I shouldn't do that, or oh, I shouldn't be there, or should. No, just to simply allow. Take what I need, because I know the creative expressions that I normally have. Be open to something new, because that's what I'm going with intention, and allowing that self and that space to be. I have heard more often than not people go, I don't believe you're going on a silent retreat for 30 days. I don't believe you can do that. Trust me, after 2 days, it's really easy. The hard part is coming back. The hard part, after being slow into a rhythm of the seasons and cycles of nature, it's really hard to get back on the freeway, to get back on the thing. So not only am I going to take a cell phone, people are worried about whether I'm going to connect on the internet. And unfortunately this time, what's happened for me, and I've shared this before, my mother's health is somewhat fragile. So there's a certain amount of connecting I'm going to have to do. I want to not have to do. I want to do to keep connected to my family and her journey at this point. But I ask you to hold me in prayer that I truly do go into that space. It's not comfortable, which is why a lot of people don't do it. And yet, once you sync up to its rhythms, you have to ask yourself, is this how we're really meant to live? With the seasons and the cycles and the less demands and the less internet connection and the less activity coming at you all the time. It's a time of great spiritual renewal. And what I really value and appreciate is when Reverend Chaz and I talked about him coming here to be with you over the month of July. He said, Marian, what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge the congregation to walk with you on sacred pilgrimage. So the themes that Chaz is going to be talking about through the month of July, I have them written down in my phone, and on Sundays, I will pull them up, and I will be journeying with you as you are journeying with me. Because nobody's, especially in the role of minister that I am, nobody has a singular journey. Remember, we all pulsate to that one vibration. That one vibration. Every cell hears it. Every DNA molecule knows it. Every thought, every action, everything pulsates to that one unit. And the one is within our one, and as the very same one is in your one, we are moving together as one great one. So I invite you to join me this month in a time of prayer, a time of reflection, in a time of creativity, to be more in tune with how it is your spiritual journey finds a release, finds a challenge, finds an insight through being the creative gift of living in this body, your body, on this planet, in this time, and how that living of that creative moment connects you with the one. Thank you, and I'll see you in a month. Bye.